The text message came through at 2:30 in the afternoon, while I was in a client meeting at the architecture firm. Family dinner tonight, 6 p.m. sharp. Important announcement, don't be late. Dennis, my stepfather. He never texted me unless it was something he considered urgent, and he never called anything important unless it directly benefited him. I excused myself from the meeting and called my mother. It went straight to voicemail. That was unusual. Mom always answered when I called, even if just to say she'd call back later. A knot of unease settled in my stomach, but I pushed it aside. I had 3 more client consultations scheduled, and a presentation due tomorrow for a lakefront development project. Whatever Dennis wanted could wait until dinner. The drive to the lake house took 90 minutes from the city. I'd made this drive hundreds of times over the past 8 years, ever since I'd purchased the property with the inheritance my father left me. The route was familiar enough that my mind could wander while my hands navigated the curves of the county highway automatically. My father had died when I was 19, leaving me a modest but significant sum, enough to finish college without debt and make a down payment on property. He'd always loved the lake, had talked about retiring there someday. When the house came on the market during my junior year of college, I bought it immediately. It felt like honoring his memory. Mom had remarried 2 years later to Dennis, an insurance broker with a loud laugh and a firm handshake. I'd tried to like him. I really had, but there was something calculating behind his friendly exterior, something that emerged in small moments when he thought no one was paying attention. The lake house appeared as I crested the final hill, its cedar siding weathered to a soft gray, large windows reflecting the late afternoon sun. It sat on 2 acres of shoreline property, with a private dock extending into the water and a boathouse that I'd renovated last summer. But something was wrong. Immediately wrong. There were cars in the driveway that shouldn't be there. Dennis's truck, yes. Mom's sedan, but also my stepbrother Kyle's Jeep, my stepsister Amanda's minivan, and 2 vehicles I didn't recognize. I parked on the street and walked up the gravel drive, my unease crystallizing into something sharper. The front door was unlocked. I stepped inside and froze. The house was full of people. Dennis stood in the center of the living room like a host at a party, holding a beer. Kyle and his wife were examining my bookshelf. Amanda sat on my couch with her husband and 3 kids. An older couple I vaguely recognized as Dennis's brother and sister-in-law occupied the chairs I'd inherited from my grandmother. Everyone turned when I entered. There she is, Dennis announced, his voice booming with false cheer. Right on time. Come in, come in. We're just getting started. Mom appeared from the kitchen carrying a platter of appetizers. Her eyes met mine briefly. There was something there, guilt maybe, or apology before she looked away. What's going on? I asked, setting my bag down carefully by the door. Dinner first, Dennis said. Then we'll talk. Everyone's here so let's eat. The dining table, my dining table, the one I'd found at an estate sale and painstakingly refinished, was set for 12 people. Places had been assigned with small name cards in Amanda's handwriting. I found my spot at the far end, away from the head of the table where Dennis had clearly positioned himself. The meal was surreal. Conversation flowed around me while I sat mostly silent, trying to understand what was happening. Kyle talked about his new job. Amanda's kids ran between the kitchen and living room, despite her half-hearted attempts to control them. Dennis's brother told a long story about a fishing trip. No one asked about my work. No one asked how I was doing. It was as if I wasn't quite there, or as if I was there but didn't really matter. Mom barely looked at me throughout the entire meal. Finally, after dessert plates had been cleared and coffee poured, Dennis stood up. He tapped his beer bottle with a fork, a gesture so cliché it would have been funny in any other context. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight, he began. This is an important moment for our family, a moment of transition and frankly correction. My hands stilled on my coffee cup. When I married Eleanor 8 years ago, Dennis continued, gesturing to my mother, I knew I was joining a family with history, with assets, with complications. He looked directly at me on that last word. Eleanor's first husband, God rest him, left his daughter. He nodded toward me. A sum of money. Money that was used to purchase this property. The room had gone completely quiet. Now at the time we all thought that was fine. Reasonable even. Young woman fresh out of college, makes an investment. We supported that. His tone suggested this support had been generous beyond measure. But 8 years have passed. Eleanor and I have been married for most of that time. And this property, this beautiful valuable property has been sitting here essentially unused, while one person claims it as her own. Kyle was nodding. Amanda watched me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Family property should belong to the family, Dennis said. Not just to one person who happened to buy it before there was a family to consider. Eleanor agrees with me. We've discussed this at length. I looked at my mother. She was staring at her coffee cup, her face pale. So Dennis set his beer down with a decisive thunk. We've made a decision. This is family property now. We'll be establishing a shared ownership structure. Everyone here, he gestured around the table, will have access. Kyle and his family can use it in the summer. Amanda and hers in the spring and fall. Eleanor and I will maintain primary residence, naturally, since we're retired and can actually appreciate it year-round. The words hung in the air like smoke. You can't do that, I said quietly. This is my house. Dennis's smile didn't waver. Actually, Jamie, we can. And we have. Your mother is co-owner of this property through marital community property laws. No, she isn't, I interrupted. I bought this house before you were married, with my own money. My name is the only one on the deed. Technicalities, Dennis waved his hand dismissively. Eleanor contributed to this property over the years. Furniture repairs, her time. In a marriage, assets are shared, and since Eleanor and I are married, that makes me a stakeholder too. That's not how property law works. The law, Dennis said, his voice hardening slightly, is open to interpretation. What's not open to interpretation is that you don't need this entire house to yourself. You live in the city, you visit maybe twice a month. That's wasteful. Selfish, honestly. Amanda spoke up for the first time. We're not trying to kick you out completely, Jamie. You can still visit. You'll just need to coordinate with the schedule we're setting up. Make sure no one else is using the house that weekend. I looked around the table. At Dennis's brother, who I'd met maybe 3 times in my life. At Kyle's wife, who'd never even pretended to like me. At Amanda's children, already treating my home like their personal playground. Where are my things? I asked. A flicker of something crossed Dennis's face. Satisfaction, maybe. We've moved them to a storage unit. Very nice facility. Climate controlled. Here's the key and the address. He slid a piece of paper across the table. We figured it would be easier to transition everything at once, rather than drag it out. Your mother packed everything very carefully. The betrayal of that hit harder than anything else. Mom had packed my belongings, had helped them remove every trace of me from my own house. You had no right. We had every right, Dennis said firmly. This is a family decision. You're outvoted. And frankly, Jamie, it's time you learned that the world doesn't revolve around you. Your father left you money, yes, but that doesn't make you special. It doesn't give you the right to hoard resources that could benefit the whole family. Kyle leaned back in his chair. Dad and Eleanor have been covering the property taxes for the past 2 years anyway. You never even knew that, did you? I turned to my mother. Is that true? She didn't answer. The tax bills come to us, Dennis said. We've been paying them. So in a sense we've already been maintaining this property financially. Consider the storage fees our gift to you. A place to keep your things while we sort out the new arrangement. I stood up. Every eye followed me. I'm going to call my attorney, I said. Dennis laughed. Go ahead. Call whoever you want. But I've already consulted with my lawyer. Family property disputes are messy, expensive, and rarely worth the trouble. You really want to drag your own mother to court? Make her choose between her daughter and her husband. I looked at Mom again. She was crying silently, tears running down her cheeks, but she didn't say anything, didn't defend me, didn't tell Dennis to stop. You need to leave, Dennis said, his voice gentler now, almost kind. That made it worse somehow. We'll give you a few minutes to collect yourself, but then we need you to go. We're moving our things in tonight, and it's going to be chaotic enough without you here causing drama. Amanda actually looked uncomfortable now. Dennis, maybe we should. No, he said firmly. This is happening. Tonight. We've all agreed. I picked up my bag from by the door, walked through the living room where Kyle's wife was already measuring the windows for new curtains, out onto the front porch where Amanda's kids were chasing each other around the yard they thought was now theirs. The dock called to me, the one place on this property that had always been mine alone. My father and I had sat on that dock the summer before he died, our feet dangling in the water, talking about nothing and everything. I'd proposed every major design project while sitting on that dock. I'd mourned, celebrated, and dreamed there. I walked down the slope of the lawn, past the fire pit, through the gap in the trees, to where the wooden planks extended out over the water. I sat down at the end, legs crossed, and looked out at the lake. The sun was setting, painting the water gold and orange and pink. A family of ducks paddled past, oblivious to human drama. Behind me, I could hear voices from the house. Laughter. The sound of furniture being moved. They were redecorating already, erasing me room by room. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a contact I'd hoped I'd never need, Margaret Torres, the attorney who'd handled the closing when I bought this property 8 years ago. She answered on the third ring. Jamie, is everything all right? No, I said quietly. I need your help. I explained the situation in concise terms. The dinner, Dennis's announcement, my belongings in storage, the claim about property taxes. Margaret listened without interrupting. Do you have the deed? She asked, when I finished. Yes, well, a copy, in my apartment in the city. And is anyone else's name on that deed? No, just mine. Have you signed any documents recently? Quitclaim deeds, transfer paperwork, anything? Nothing. There was a pause. I could hear her typing. Jamie, I need you to listen carefully. What they've done, removing your belongings, claiming ownership, all of it, that's illegal. That's potentially criminal trespass and theft, depending on the value of the items they've taken. Their family, I said. My mother, I don't care if they're the Pope, Margaret said sharply. You own that property. Your name is on the deed, recorded with the county. Your stepfather has no legal claim to it. Neither does anyone else, unless you've transferred ownership, which you haven't. He said he's been paying the property taxes. Who receives the tax bills? I thought about that. I set up automatic payment from my bank account 8 years ago. I haven't thought about it since. The bills probably go to the house address, but you've been paying them electronically. Margaret finished. He's lying, or at best confused. Do you have access to your bank records? I pulled up my banking app while still on the phone with her, scrolled through to the automatic payments section. There it was, county property tax, paid quarterly every quarter for the past 8 years. Never missed a payment. I've been paying them, I confirmed, every quarter, automatically. Of course you have. Jamie, I need you to do something for me right now. Call the county tax assessor's office. It's after hours, but they have an emergency line for property disputes. The number is, she rattled it off while I typed it into my notes. Call them and request immediate verification of property ownership. Tell them there's been a potential fraud attempt. They'll send someone out. Tonight. Yes, tonight. Property disputes can escalate fast. They take this seriously. Once you've made that call, call me back. I'll be drafting an emergency motion for a restraining order. If your stepfather doesn't vacate your property voluntarily, we'll have the sheriff remove him. My hands were shaking. This is really happening. Yes, but Jamie, you're going to be fine. You own that property. That's not a gray area, or open to interpretation. That's a legal fact. Everything Dennis said to you was either a lie or wishful thinking. Stand your ground. I ended the call and immediately dialed the number Margaret had given me. A bored-sounding clerk answered and perked up considerably when I explained the situation. Ma'am, we take property fraud very seriously. Can you provide the property address and your identification? I gave her everything she asked for. Address, my driver's license number, the property tax ID number I found in my banking records. One moment please. The hold music was incongruously cheerful. I watched the sunset deepen, the gold fading to purple. Behind me, I could hear someone starting up a lawnmower. They were doing yard work. In the dark. In October. They were marking territory. Miss Thompson, the clerk was back. I've pulled up the records. You are listed as the sole owner of the property in question. There are no liens, no other names on the deed, and your property taxes are current, paid in full through the end of this fiscal year. Can you verify who's been paying those taxes? Yes, ma'am. Electronic payments from an account in your name at First National Bank. Every quarter since you purchased the property. You're actually one of our most reliable accounts. Never missed a payment. Never been late. Something loosened in my chest. Someone has claimed they've been paying the taxes. They've used that claim to justify taking possession of my property. The clerk's tone changed. That's fraud, ma'am. I'm going to escalate this to our investigative department. They'll want to send someone out tonight if possible. Are you at the property now? Yes, on the dock behind the house. Stay there, don't engage with the other parties. An assessor will be there within 45 minutes. They'll bring documentation proving ownership and will contact local law enforcement if necessary. Do you feel you're in any physical danger? No, I said. They think they own this place. They don't, the clerk said firmly. Sit tight, help is coming. I called Margaret back and told her about the conversation. She sounded satisfied. Good, don't go back in that house. Stay on the dock where you're visible but separate. Let the authorities handle this. My mother is in there, I said. She helped them do this. Margaret's voice softened. I know, I'm sorry, but you need to protect yourself right now. Family relationships can be repaired. Property rights, once you surrender them, are much harder to recover. We ended the call, and I sat there, phone in my lap, watching the last light fade from the sky. The house behind me glowed with warm light from every window. My windows, my electricity, my house. Voices drifted down to the dock. Someone was on the back porch, smoking. Kyle, probably. He was laughing at something. The sound carrying across the water. Headlights appeared on the road. One vehicle, then another right behind it. They turned into the driveway and parked next to the growing collection of family vehicles. I stood up and walked back up toward the house, staying in the shadows of the trees. A white van with County Tax Assessor's office printed on the side sat in the driveway. Behind it, a sheriff's patrol car, its lights off but its presence unmistakable. A woman in a county polo shirt climbed out of the van, carrying a tablet and a large folder. The sheriff's deputy, a tall man with gray hair, followed her. They were met at the front door by Dennis, who'd come out at the sound of the vehicles. I could see his confident posture, the way he stepped forward to take control of the situation. Can I help you? His voice carried in the still evening air. I'm Susan Martinez, from the County Tax Assessor's office, the woman said. This is Deputy Williams. We've received a report of potential property fraud at this address. We need to verify ownership. Fraud? Dennis laughed. There's no fraud. This is a family property. My stepdaughter thinks she owns it, but we're in the process of, Sir, Susan interrupted. Can you show me documentation of your ownership of this property? Well, my wife. Is your wife's name on the deed? Not technically, but is your name on the deed? No, but that's not the point. In a marriage, sir, I'm going to stop you there. Susan opened her folder. According to county records, this property is owned solely by Jamie Thompson, purchased 8 years ago, title clear, no other names on the deed. Property taxes have been paid consistently by Miss Thompson, via electronic transfer. There is no shared ownership, no community property claim, no legal basis for anyone else to claim rights to this property. By now, everyone had come out of the house. Mom stood behind Dennis, her arms wrapped around herself. Kyle and Amanda flanked them. The others hung back on the porch, suddenly less certain of their welcome. Where is Miss Thompson? Deputy Williams asked. Here, I said, stepping out of the shadows. Susan's expression softened when she saw me. Miss Thompson, I'm going to need to see your identification, please. I handed over my driver's license. She compared it to something on her tablet, then nodded. You are the legal owner of this property. These people, she gestured to Dennis and the others, have no legal right to be here without your permission. Do you give them permission to be here? Everyone was staring at me. Mom's face was streaked with tears. Dennis had gone very still, his confident facade cracking. No, I said clearly. I don't. Deputy Williams stepped forward. Folks, you need to vacate this property immediately. You have 15 minutes to gather any personal belongings you brought with you today and leave. Any items belonging to Miss Thompson that you've removed need to be returned, or you'll be charged with theft. Now wait just a damn minute. Dennis started. Sir, I'm not going to argue with you, the deputy said. You've been told by a county official that you have no legal right to this property. If you refuse to leave, you'll be arrested for trespassing. Is that what you want? Amanda was already herding her kids toward the minivan. Her husband grabbed a bag they'd brought and followed without a word. Kyle looked like he wanted to argue, but thought better of it. He and his wife disappeared into the house, and emerged a minute later with a suitcase. Dennis stood frozen, his jaw working. Eleanor, he said without looking at my mother, we're leaving. Mom finally looked at me, her mouth opened like she wanted to say something, an apology, an explanation, anything, but no words came out. Mom, I said quietly, did you really think this was okay? He said we had a right, she whispered. He said you'd never even notice, that you barely used the place. He said, he lied to you, I said, about the taxes, about community property, about all of it. She looked at Dennis, who wouldn't meet her eyes. Understanding dawned on her face, followed by something that looked like horror. Eleanor, Dennis said sharply. Now Mrs. Thompson, Susan said gently. If your husband has been misrepresenting property ownership to you, that's something you might want to discuss with your own attorney. Mom nodded slowly. She started toward Dennis's truck, then stopped, turned back to me. I'm sorry, Jamie. I'm so sorry. I thought we were doing the right thing. You packed my things, I said. You helped him remove me from my own house. I know. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. I know. I was wrong. I don't know what I was thinking. Eleanor, Dennis was in his truck now, engine running. Mom got in the passenger seat. Through the windshield, I could see Dennis berating her, his face red, his hands gesturing angrily. She sat very small and still, staring straight ahead. They left. Then Kyle and his wife, then Amanda's family, then Dennis's brother and sister-in-law, who apologized profusely as they backed out of the driveway. Within 10 minutes, the property was empty except for me, Susan, and Deputy Williams. Miss Thompson, Susan said, I'm going to need you to document everything that was removed from your property. The deputy can help you file a police report for theft if necessary. Do you know where your belongings were taken? I showed her the paper Dennis had given me with the storage unit information. Deputy Williams made a note. I'll send someone to secure that unit tonight. Don't let them claim they've disposed of anything. We'll get your things back. Susan handed me her card. I'm also recommending you have the locks changed immediately, all of them, and consider a security system. I've seen family property disputes before, and they don't always end cleanly. They really thought they could just take my house, I said, still processing. People convince themselves of a lot of things when they want something badly enough. Susan said, your stepfather probably genuinely believed he had some claim. Or maybe he was just hoping you wouldn't fight back. Either way, the law is clear. This is your property, bought and paid for with your own money, maintained at your expense. No one can take that from you. They left around 9:30, after ensuring I felt safe staying at the property alone. I locked the doors, though the locks would be changed first thing tomorrow, and walked through the house room by room. They'd moved so much. Boxes were stacked in corners, new furniture arranged in my living room, their clothes hanging in my closets. It would take days to remove everything they'd brought, to restore the house to the way it had been. But it was mine, legally indisputably mine. I found my laptop in the storage unit information. They'd been decent enough to include an inventory list. I'd retrieve everything tomorrow. Tonight, I just wanted to be here, in my house, on my property. I made tea, and went back out to the dock. The stars were out now, reflected in the still water. Somewhere across the lake, I could hear music playing, someone else's party, someone else's life continuing normally, while mine had just exploded. My phone buzzed. Margaret, Deputy Williams briefed me. Restraining order will be filed tomorrow morning. You did great. Another text, this one from a number I didn't recognize. Jamie, this is your mother. I'm using a friend's phone. Dennis took mine. I'm staying at a hotel tonight. Can we talk? I need to explain. I need to apologize properly. I stared at that message for a long time. Finally, I typed back. Not tonight, maybe not for a while. You chose him over me. You helped him try to steal my home. I need time. Her response came immediately. I understand. I'm so sorry. I love you. I didn't reply to that. Instead, I called a locksmith service that advertised 24-hour emergency response, scheduled them for first thing in the morning. Then I called a security company and booked a consultation for tomorrow afternoon. The house would be secure. My property would be protected. The law had proven what I knew to be true. I sat on the dock until nearly midnight, drinking tea, watching the stars, listening to the water lap against the posts. My father would have been horrified by what had happened tonight, but he also would have been proud of how I'd handled it. Stand your ground, he'd always said. Know what's yours, and protect it. This was mine. This dock, this water, this view, this house and everything in it, earned with money he'd left me, maintained with my own work, defended with the truth. No one could take that away. The lake was calm, dark, eternal. I sat there feeling the weight of the day settle into my bones, transforming into something harder, something that would serve me well in the days to come, when family relationships would need to be renegotiated or ended, when boundaries would need to be drawn and enforced. I'd been kind enough to let them assume I was weak. That error wouldn't be repeated. Tomorrow I'd change the locks, install cameras, retrieve my belongings, document everything for the legal proceedings that would likely follow. But tonight, I simply sat on my dock, on my property, in the home I'd built from my father's final gift, and let the truth of ownership settle around me like armor. The house lights glowed behind me. My lights, in my house, on my land. No one would take this from me again. The sound of laughter and clinking glasses drifted through the open windows of the beach house as I pulled into the driveway after my shift at the Marine Research Facility. It was nearly 9 in the evening, and I'd spent the last 12 hours cataloging water samples and reviewing environmental impact reports. My hands still smelled faintly of salt water and latex gloves. The party was in full swing. I could see shadows moving behind the sheer curtains, bodies swaying to music. I could feel vibrating through my chest even from the car. This wasn't unusual. My brother Marcus had been throwing these gatherings every weekend for the past month, ever since he'd moved back home after his third failed business venture. What was unusual was the way the celebration seemed bigger tonight, louder, more triumphant. I grabbed my laptop bag from the passenger seat and headed toward the side entrance, the one that led directly to my room without passing through the main living area. It had become my habit over the past few weeks, avoiding the parties, avoiding the questions about why I wasn't making something of myself like Marcus apparently was. The key didn't turn. I tried again, jiggling the handle. Nothing. The lock had been changed. My stomach tightened, but I kept my breathing steady. I walked around to the front entrance, where paper lanterns had been strung across the porch and tiki torches lit the path. The main door was propped open, warm light and noise spilling out onto the sand. I stepped inside. The living room was packed with people I'd never seen before. Marcus stood in the center, holding court with a champagne bottle in one hand, his other arm draped around a woman in a white sundress. My Aunt Patricia was there, along with my cousins Jennifer and David. My Uncle Robert held a plate piled high with shrimp from the catering spread that covered the entire kitchen counter. Marcus saw me first. His smile faltered for just a second before transforming into something harder. "Oh, look who finally decided to show up," he announced loudly. The conversations around him died down. The beach bum herself. People turned to stare. I stood in the doorway, still holding my laptop bag, my work badge still clipped to my collar. "Marcus, I just got home from work," I said quietly. "What's going on? What's going on?" He laughed, and several people joined in. "What's going on is that we're celebrating. This family is finally taking control of what's rightfully ours." Aunt Patricia stepped forward, her expression a mixture of pity and satisfaction. "Sweetheart, we need to have a conversation about your living situation here." "My living situation?" I set my bag down carefully by the door. "You've been living here rent-free for 5 years," Uncle Robert said, gesturing with his shrimp fork, "while the rest of us have been working real jobs, building real careers. This property is a family asset, and it's time it was managed properly." Marcus moved closer, his voice dropping to a tone that made everyone lean in to hear. "Pack your bags, Sophia. You're embarrassing us, living here like some kind of charity case while we all pretend you're doing something important at that little lab of yours." The room had gone completely silent now. I could hear the waves outside, the distant cry of a seagull. "This is my house," I said simply. Marcus laughed, a genuine belly laugh that made his face turn red. "Your house? Your house? That's rich. That's actually hilarious." He turned to the crowd. "She thinks this is her house." Jennifer stepped forward, her phone already out and recording. "Sophia, be realistic. You work part-time at a research facility making what, $30,000 a year? This property is worth $3 million. The property taxes alone are more than your annual salary." The family decided, Aunt Patricia said, her voice taking on that careful therapeutic tone she used. "We had a meeting last week. This house belongs to all of us. Dad left it to all his children, which means Marcus and I have just as much right to it as your mother did. And since she passed, well, the responsibility falls to us. We've already contacted a property management company," David added. He was leafing through a folder, very official looking. "They'll be taking over operations next month. We're converting it to a vacation rental. The income will be split among the family members who actually contribute." Marcus drained his champagne and slammed the bottle down on the coffee table. "So yeah, Sophia, pack your bags. You have until tomorrow morning to get your stuff out of the bedrooms. We're having contractors come in to start renovations." I looked around the room, at the faces of my family, at the strangers who'd come to celebrate what they saw as a victory, at the catering spread that must have cost thousands of dollars, at the new furniture that had replaced pieces I'd selected carefully over the years. "You changed the locks," I said. "Damn right we did," Marcus replied, "while you were at work today. Security measure. Can't have you trying to sabotage the renovations out of spite." Uncle Robert had moved to the mantel, where he was examining the photographs I'd displayed there. Pictures of my parents, of my graduation from my doctoral program, of the research vessel I'd worked on in the Pacific. He picked up the frame with my mother and turned it face down. Fresh start, he said. No need to live in the past. Something crystallized in that moment. I'd known this was coming. Marcus had been circling for months, making comments about the wasted potential of the property, about how I was squatting in a valuable asset. But I'd hoped, foolishly, perhaps that family meant something more than property values and rental income projections. I pulled out my phone. "What are you doing?" Jennifer asked, still recording. "Calling someone to cry to." I didn't answer. I opened my email app and began scrolling through my messages, looking for a specific thread. Behind me, the party had resumed its noise, people already dismissing me as irrelevant to their evening. Marcus returned to his position in the center of the room, refreshing his champagne from a new bottle. "Let's toast," he called out, "to new beginnings, to the Roberts family finally taking control of our legacy." Glasses clinked. Someone turned the music up louder. I found the email I was looking for and tapped the phone number at the bottom. It rang 3 times before connecting. "Sophia?" The voice on the other end was professional, alert despite the late hour. "Is everything all right?" "No, James," I said quietly. "I need you to come to the property now and bring the documentation we discussed." "Copy that. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Do you need me to contact the others?" I glanced at Marcus, who was now standing on the coffee table, leading the room in some kind of drinking game. "Yes, all of them. Tell them it's urgent." "Understood. Sit tight." I ended the call and slipped the phone back into my pocket. Then I walked through the crowd, people parting reluctantly to let me pass, and out onto the back deck. The ocean was calm tonight, the moon reflecting off the water in a silver path that stretched to the horizon. I sat down on the wooden bench my father had built, the one that faced directly toward the water. This had been his favorite spot. He'd sit here every evening after work, sometimes reading, sometimes just watching the waves. I could still hear the party inside, but out here, the sound of the ocean was louder, more real. My phone buzzed with a text from James. "En route. Commissioner Lewis and Attorney General's office have been notified. ETA 12 minutes. I texted back, "Thank you." Another buzz. This one from Dr. Helena Vasquez, my supervisor at the research facility. "Heard about the situation. Do you need backup?" I smiled despite everything. "Already handled, but thank you." The deck door slid open behind me. I didn't turn around. "Still here?" Marcus's voice was slurred now, the champagne hitting him. "I thought you'd have run off to your sad little apartment by now." "Oh wait, you don't have one, do you? Because you've been freeloading here for years." "I've been living here, yes," I said, still facing the ocean. He stumbled over and leaned against the railing, his expression shifting between anger and something that might have been guilt if he'd been sober enough to feel it. "You know what your problem is, Sophia. You never had any ambition. Mom and Dad spoiled you, let you waste your time on those stupid fish studies instead of getting a real job." "Marine biology," I corrected softly, "and environmental policy analysis. Same difference. Playing in the water while the rest of us built actual careers." He gestured back toward the house. "Patricia's a real estate developer. Robert runs a consulting firm. I've had 3 businesses that all failed," I said. His face darkened. "They were learning experiences. The point is, we're doers. You're a spectator, living in this house like you earned it somehow." "I did earn it." He laughed again, that same mocking sound. "How? By studying plankton, by writing reports nobody reads. This house is worth millions, Sophia. Millions. You couldn't afford the insurance on it, let alone the mortgage if there was one." "There isn't a mortgage," I said, "because Dad paid it off before he died. Which means it's family property, which means we all have a say, and we've said you need to go." He pushed off from the railing, swaying slightly. "Tomorrow morning, Sophia. I'm not kidding. Security will be here to escort you out if you're not gone by 10. He stumbled back inside, sliding the door shut with more force than necessary. I checked my phone. 7 minutes. Inside, the party had reached a crescendo. I could see through the windows as Marcus climbed back onto the coffee table, this time with Patricia joining him. They were making another toast, gesturing grandly at the space around them, already seeing it transformed into whatever money-making venture they'd planned. Jennifer had her phone out, live streaming the celebration to her social media. I could see the comments scrolling past, friends and strangers congratulating the family on their smart business move and their tough love approach to dealing with an entitled family member. David was showing Uncle Robert architectural plans he'd printed out, pointing at different rooms and explaining renovation concepts. They'd clearly been planning this for a while, months probably, maybe years. My phone buzzed again. James, 2 minutes out, can see the house. I stood up and walked to the railing, looking down at the private beach access. The tide was coming in, water lapping at the wooden stairs that led down to the sand. This beach, this specific stretch of coastline, had been the subject of my doctoral dissertation. I'd spent hundreds of hours documenting the ecosystems here, mapping the delicate balance between human development and natural habitat. Headlights appeared on the road leading to the house, not one vehicle, but three. The lead car was James's black SUV, behind it a white van marked with the California Coastal Commission seal. The third vehicle was a dark sedan that I recognized as belonging to the Regional Enforcement Division. They parked in a line along the street, careful not to block the driveway where party guests had left their cars in a chaotic jumble. I walked back through the house, moving through the crowd without making eye contact. Marcus saw me heading for the door and called out, finally leaving, "Don't let the door hit you on the way out." More laughter. Someone made a comment about knowing when you're beat. I opened the front door just as James reached the porch. He was in his official uniform, gray pants, white shirt with the Coastal Commission badge on the shoulder. Behind him, two more officers in similar attire, both carrying official-looking briefcases. "Miss Roberts," James said formally, loud enough for people nearby to hear. "Thank you for calling us. We came as quickly as we could." The conversations in the living room had started to die down. People were noticing the uniforms, the official vehicles outside. Marcus pushed through the crowd. "What the hell is this, Sophia? What did you do?" I stepped aside, letting James and his colleagues enter. One of them, Officer Denise Chang, according to her name badge, was already pulling out a tablet and stylus. "I'm James Morrison, Chief Enforcement Officer for the California Coastal Commission, Southern Regional Division," James announced. His voice carried through the now silent house. "These are Officers Chang and Rodriguez. We're here to address multiple violations of California Coastal Act regulations that have been occurring at this property." Patricia's face had gone pale. "Violations? What violations?" "We haven't done anything yet. Actually, ma'am, you have," Officer Rodriguez said, consulting his own tablet. "We have documented evidence of unpermitted alterations to a protected structure, unauthorized party assembly exceeding environmental capacity limits, and illegal commercial planning for a property within a designated coastal protection zone." Marcus's champagne glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the hardwood floor. "Commercial planning? We're just having a family party, sir. We have recordings of you discussing conversion of this property to a vacation rental," Officer Chang said. "That would constitute commercial use, which requires specific permits that have not been obtained. Additionally, this property sits on a section of coastline that is under protective restriction due to its environmental significance." Uncle Robert had found his voice. "Now wait just a minute. This is private property, family property. You can't just come in here and—" "Actually, sir, we can," James said. He turned to me. "Miss Roberts, would you like to explain the situation to your family?" Every eye in the room fixed on me. I took a breath, feeling the weight of this moment. "This property," I said clearly, "is not family property. It never was." "That's a lie," Marcus said, but his voice had lost its confidence. "Dad left it to all of us. Dad left his estate to Mom." I interrupted. "His entire estate. When she was diagnosed with cancer 7 years ago, she transferred the property into a conservation trust. I am the trustee, and the designated resident of that trust. The property cannot be sold, cannot be commercially developed, and cannot be transferred outside the terms of the trust agreement." The silence was absolute now. Someone's phone buzzed, but they didn't reach for it. Patricia found her voice first. That's not possible. We would have been notified." "You were notified," I said. "Mom's attorney sent registered letters to every family member 6 years ago, outlining the terms of the trust. I have the certified mail receipts." Officer Chang had pulled up a document on her tablet. "The Roberts Coastal Conservation Trust, established January 2019, with Dr. Sophia Roberts as trustee. The property is designated as a research facility and conservation education center. All of that is public record." "Research facility," David's voice cracked. "It's a house. It's a research station," I corrected. I've been conducting federally funded coastal ecosystem studies here for the past 5 years. The facility is registered with 3 different environmental agencies. I have an active NOAA grant and partnerships with 2 California universities. Jennifer's phone was still recording, but now she looked uncertain about whether she should be documenting this. James pulled a folder from his briefcase. These are the current permits and registrations for this property. As you can see, Dr. Roberts has full legal authority over this location. Any attempt to alter, sell, or commercially develop this property would constitute a federal violation, as it would interfere with ongoing environmental research. Marcus had sunk into one of the new chairs they'd brought in, his face ashen. But the property taxes, the insurance, the maintenance, you can't possibly afford. The trust covers all expenses, I said, plus my salary as resident researcher and property manager. My little lab job you mentioned, I'm the assistant director of coastal ecosystem studies for Southern California. My annual salary is $140,000, plus research grants and publication royalties. Patricia made a sound like air escaping from a balloon. The part-time work you saw, I continued, those are field days. I also work from home 3 days a week, analyzing data, writing reports for the Environmental Protection Agency, consulting with the state legislature on coastal protection policy. Uncle Robert was frantically scrolling through his phone, probably trying to verify what I was saying. His face told me he was finding the confirmation he didn't want to see. As for this party, Officer Rodriguez said, pulling out what looked like a citation pad, you've exceeded the property's environmental capacity limit by approximately 40 people. You've also made unauthorized alterations to the structure. Those tiki torches are explicitly prohibited under coastal fire safety regulations. The catering setup is dumping wastewater into a protected drainage system. And the locks you changed, James added, looking directly at Marcus. Changing locks on a registered research facility, without authorization from the trustee, constitutes interference with federal research operations. That's a criminal offense. Marcus's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Officer Chang had been taking notes the entire time. We'll need everyone to vacate the premises within the next 30 minutes. Dr. Roberts, we'll need you to file a formal complaint regarding the unauthorized access and property alterations. I will, I said. Patricia had recovered enough to try one more angle. Even if all of this is true, we're still family. You can't just throw us out. You threw me out, I said quietly. 2 hours ago, in front of all these people, you told me I was embarrassing you, that I didn't deserve to be here. Jennifer's recording was still running. I could see her wrestling with whether to delete it, or keep it as evidence of what had actually happened. The party needs to end, James said firmly. Everyone needs to leave. Now, officers, please begin clearing the premises. What followed was chaos, but orderly chaos. Rodriguez and Chang moved through the house, politely but firmly directing guests toward the door. The strangers left quickly, embarrassed to be caught in the middle of a family dispute that had turned into a legal situation. The catering staff scrambled to pack up their supplies, apologizing repeatedly though they'd done nothing wrong. My family moved slower, gathering their things with the stunned movements of people who just watched their reality completely shift. Marcus stopped in front of me on his way out. You planned this. You let us make fools of ourselves. I let you reveal who you really are, I said. I didn't plan the party. I didn't tell you to change the locks or mock me in front of strangers, or throw away my mother's photographs. He flinched at that last part. I just came home from work, I continued. Everything else was your choice. He left without another word. Aunt Patricia tried a different approach. Sophia honey, we can talk about this. We're family. Family doesn't do what you did tonight, I said. Family doesn't celebrate throwing someone out of their home. Family doesn't call someone an embarrassment for working in environmental conservation. She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. She picked up her purse and left. Uncle Robert paused at the door. Your father would be ashamed of you for this. My father, I said, my voice hardening, established the initial framework for this conservation trust before he died. He's the one who insisted the property could never be sold or commercially developed. He knew exactly what kind of people would come circling after he was gone. He was protecting his life's work, and his daughter. Robert's face flushed red, but he had nothing to say to that. He left. Jennifer and David were the last of the family to go. Jennifer finally stopped recording, and looked at me with something that might have been respect or might have been calculation. I couldn't tell which. That was brutal, she said. Yes, I agreed. It was. They left together, heads bent over Jennifer's phone, probably already crafting the social media narrative of what had happened. The house was empty now, except for me and the 3 Coastal Commission officers. They were documenting the alterations Marcus's crew had made, photographing the new furniture, the changed locks, the tiki torches, the areas where wastewater had been improperly disposed of. James came over while Chang and Rodriguez finished their work. Are you okay? I nodded. Thank you for coming so quickly. When you called, I knew it was serious. You never would have contacted me, unless they'd actually gone through with it. He glanced around the house. Your family really had no idea about any of this. They never asked, I said. They saw me going to work every day, assumed I had some low-level job, because I didn't drive a fancy car or wear expensive clothes. They never asked what I actually did, never asked about my research, my degrees, my work. They just assumed. Their loss. James said. Your work on the coastal erosion patterns has influenced policy across 3 states. The EPA cites your research constantly. Officer Chang approached with her tablet. Dr. Roberts, we'll need your signature on the incident report. We're documenting everything for the official record. Given the severity of the violations and the interference with federal research, we'll be recommending prosecution. I signed where she indicated. Rodriguez handed me a new set of keys. These are temporary. We're recommending you get a full security system installed. Given tonight's events, we can provide you with a list of approved contractors who work with protected properties. Thank you, I said, taking the keys. They finished their documentation and prepared to leave. James was the last one at the door. This is going to get worse before it gets better, he warned. Your family will probably try legal action. They might go to the media. Let them, I said. Everything I told them tonight is documented. Public record. They can't dispute facts. He nodded. Still, be prepared. And call me if you need anything, officially or unofficially. I will. He left, and I was alone in the house. The silence was profound after the noise of the party. I walked through the rooms, looking at the damage. The broken glass from Marcus's dropped champagne. The scuff marks on the walls from where they'd moved furniture. The photographs that had been taken down and piled carelessly in a corner. I spent an hour cleaning up, putting things back where they belonged. I rehung my parents' photographs. I swept up the broken glass. I returned my mother's favorite throw pillows to the couch, where she used to read every evening. By midnight the house looked almost normal again. I made myself tea and went back out to the deck, sitting on my father's bench. My phone had been buzzing steadily for the past hour with text messages. Most were from family members, ranging from angry to pleading to threatening. I didn't read them in detail. I'd deal with all of that tomorrow. But there was one message I did read, from Dr. Vasquez. Just saw the Coastal Commission report. You okay? Also hell of a way to shut down unauthorized development. Remind me never to cross you. Coffee tomorrow? I smiled and texted back. Coffee sounds perfect. Another message came through, this one from an unknown number. Dr. Roberts, this is Attorney Jennifer Chen, from the State Environmental Protection Office. We've been monitoring the situation with your property. We'd like to discuss expanding the conservation trust model you've established. Would you be available for a call this week? I replied. Absolutely. Thank you for reaching out. The waves continued their eternal rhythm against the shore. Somewhere down the beach, I could hear the bark of a sea lion. The moon had risen higher, its light painting everything silver and shadow. This house, this stretch of coastline, it had been worth protecting. My parents had known that. I knew that. The science supported it. The law supported it. My phone buzzed one more time. Marcus, you destroyed this family. I didn't reply. I simply blocked the number and set my phone down. The family had destroyed itself. I just refused to be destroyed along with it. I sat there for a long time, listening to the ocean, feeling the cool night air, watching the stars emerge one by one from the darkening sky. This was my home, my research station, my contribution to the preservation of one small but vital piece of the California coastline. Tomorrow I'd file the formal complaints. I'd contact my attorney about restraining orders if Marcus tried to come back. I'd reach out to my colleagues and give them a heads up about potential media attention. I'd do all the practical things that needed to be done. But tonight I just sat with my tea, in my father's favorite spot, in the house that my family had built, and my parents had protected, and I would continue to preserve. The Coastal Commission officers had left their business cards on the kitchen counter. Official documentation of what had happened here tonight. Proof that sometimes, the people who seem powerless are simply waiting for the right moment to reveal the truth. I finished my tea as the moon climbed higher, silver light spilling across the water. In the morning I'd return to my research. I had a grant proposal due next week, a meeting with a university about a collaborative study, and 3 graduate students coming to learn field research techniques. My real life, my real work, the things that actually mattered. The house settled around me with familiar sounds. The creak of old wood, the whisper of wind through the screens, the eternal song of the ocean. I was home, and I would protect it, just as my parents had intended. The night deepened, and I sat watching the waves, thinking about conservation and family, and the different ways we choose to protect what matters. Sometimes protection means fighting. Sometimes it means documenting and preparing, and waiting for the right moment. And sometimes, it means simply sitting on a bench your father built, drinking tea, and watching the ocean continue its timeless work of shaping the shore.